Okay, next part of Unit 4, two-way tables. I'm going to go through the whole process, but the thing that gets people mixed up the most is when we talk about conditional relative frequency. I'm going to touch upon that very, very later on in this, but very quickly, a two-way table is a way that I can take two different pieces of data and make it displayed nicely, easily for kind of someone to read. Okay, so for this one, and you've seen this one before, the first thing that we're talking about is males and females and which type of car they like, Mustang, Camaro, or Challenger. Okay, so very basics first. Everything in the green section that I'm drawing now, these are called joint relative frequencies. Okay, so joint relative frequencies are the data tables that are in the middle of the set, or the body of the table. Okay, now everything else represents a marginal relative frequency. And the way that we remember that is they are in the margins, like if this was a piece of paper. So the bottom and then the top or the side. Okay, so those are the marginal relative frequencies. Conditional relative frequencies it's based on a specific condition. So there's no set value of a conditional relative frequency. I have to actually give you what the question wants to know. So before we get into that, all of these values, every one of these except this one, which is the grand total, when I want to find the joint or relative marginal frequencies, I'm actually going to divide them by that total. So for instance, 23 is going to be divided by 125, and so on. 30 is 125. I'm even going to go down to the marginal relative frequencies and divide them by that. Okay, so all of them are going to have a denominator of 125. Okay, that will give you the percentage or the decimal or the fraction, right, of the total. Okay, so that's just joint and marginal relative frequencies. I think I actually said relative before, and I usually get that. I usually say that wrong, but you can point that out for me in class. Okay, so let's talk about a conditional relative frequency. Conditional relative frequencies, there are two types. Okay, there is row and there is column. And basically it just gives you kind of like a map, like a road map to see what numbers you're looking at. And it's based on two separate things. Let's take number one, for instance. Given that a person is male, and remember how I say this comma is extremely important. That's kind of like a period, and it's like a stop sign. Stop right there, identify how many people are male. So I'm going to go to the male row, okay, and I'm going to go to the total. Okay? That means that I am talking about a row conditional relative frequency. And with conditional relative frequencies, the format, how to find it, how to find that percentage or that decimal, is it is a joint relative frequency divided by a marginal relative frequency. Okay, so now we're getting a little bit easier with this process now because I know where to put stuff. 77 is a marginal relative frequency because it's on that side or that bottom. So that's going to be my denominator. Okay? Now we've figured out that first part. Now we can go ahead, erase, and then I'm going to go ahead and find that second part. So what is the conditional relative frequency? That they like any car besides the Mustang. Pretty tricky, okay? So any car besides Mustang, that means I can't count Mustangs, but I can count Camaros and Challengers. So 30 plus 24 is 54. We know that these are joint relative frequencies. I'm going to put the 54 up top here. And then on your calculator, because I want the percentage or the decimal, if I don't specify, I want the percentage. So I'm going to divide 54 by 77, and I'm going to get a big long number, but if I want to round it to the nearest hundredth, I'm just going to make it 0.70, which is going to give me 70%. Okay, so 70% of males prefer any car but Mustang. Okay, that was my first one. And that's probably as tricky as it's going to get, to be honest with you. But you just got to know where to look for your answers. Number two, I think you can see that. Given that a person is not male, comma, just stop right there. Not male means female, okay? So given that a person is female, again, we're going to talk about a row conditional relative frequency, and there are 48 total females. Okay, so it's just simply kind of looking at the table. So I know 48 is going to be my denominator, okay? What is the probability that they like Challengers? So different setup than this one, but it's asking similar things. What's the probability that females like Challengers? So you're going to only look at these numbers. Okay? Challengers falls into this section, so I know that 16 has to be my numerator. Now, when I divide it, I should get 1/3. 16 divided by 48 is going to give me 0.3 repeating, so it's 0.3 repeating, or I'm just going to do 1/3 or 33%. Okay, so 33% of females prefer challengers. Okay. Conditional relative frequency. There are two parts to the questions. The first part, which is going to tell you what the total is, and the second part is going to say what part of that total, or what fraction, am I looking at?